Hollywood has always sold the illusion of perfection, flawless faces, carefully protected reputations, and careers shaped to look untouchable. But behind that bright facade exists a far darker truth, one where pressure, addiction, reckless choices, or years of carefully hidden turmoil eventually collide with the law. In this countdown, we examine the actresses whose journeys took them from red carpet fame to real prison cells. Some were rising stars who spiraled out of control. Others were icons who shocked the nation with sudden, devastating falls. All of them became cautionary tales that still echo across American pop culture. Who were they? What happened behind the scenes? And how did Hollywood react when the spotlight turned harsh? Let's begin the descent. 15. Felicity Huffman. Felicity Huffman spent decades building the image of a disciplined, respected American actress. Long before her legal troubles, she earned acclaim on stage and screen, becoming a familiar presence in prestige television and thoughtful indie films. Her breakout moment came with Desperate Housewives, a show that turned her into a household name and earned her major awards recognition. At her peak, Huffman stood as one of Hollywood's most admired working actresses, polished, articulate, and widely considered a serious professional in an industry obsessed with appearances. But behind the carefully managed image, Huffman faced personal pressures familiar to many parents navigating elite academic spaces. Those anxieties ultimately pushed her toward a decision that would redefine her legacy. When federal investigators uncovered a sprawling college admissions scheme involving wealthy parents, falsified test scores, and illicit payments, Huffman's name appeared prominently in the case. Her involvement was limited compared to others, but it was unmistakably real. She had paid to manipulate her daughter's standardized test performance, an action that struck a nerve in a country already frustrated with privilege and access. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Audiences who once saw her as principled and relatable now viewed her through a sharply different lens. News outlets, late-night hosts, and online commentators dissected every detail of the scandal. Hollywood insiders expressed shock that someone with her reputation had crossed a legal line, while others argued the case revealed deeper inequalities embedded in America's education system. Huffman's quiet public persona made the revelation even more jarring. She wasn't known as reckless, volatile, or scandal-prone, which intensified the sense of betrayal among longtime fans. When she pleaded guilty, Huffman became one of the most high-profile actresses in American history to serve actual prison time. Her sentence was short, but symbolic. It marked a rare moment when a Hollywood figure faced real consequences for actions tied not to addiction or personal chaos, but to calculated decision-making. She served her time quietly, avoided interviews, and attempted to rebuild her life with a tone of humility rather than defensiveness. That approach softened some public anger, though the stain on her career remained significant. In American pop culture, Felicity Huffman's case stands as a modern parable about pressure, privilege, and parental ambition. She didn't experience a dramatic on-set meltdown or a years-long tabloid spectacle. Instead, her downfall emerged from a single choice that collided with a national conversation already filled with resentment and scrutiny. Her journey from celebrated actress to federal inmate continues to be cited in discussions of fairness, accountability, and the fragile nature of Hollywood reputations. 14. Loughlin. For decades, Loughlin embodied the image of the wholesome American actress. She rose to national recognition with her role on Full House, where she became a comforting presence in living rooms across the country. Audiences connected with her warmth, poise, and grounded charm qualities that made her a fixture in family programming and later in a series of feel-good television movies. At her height, Loughlin represented stability in an industry known for volatility. Her public persona was clean, controlled, and deliberately free of drama. But the reality behind that polished image shifted dramatically when federal agents revealed a sweeping college admissions conspiracy. Loughlin, along with her husband, faced accusations of participating in a scheme involving fabricated athletic profiles, illicit payments, and orchestrated deception designed to secure their daughter's admission into a prestigious university. Unlike others who entered quick guilty pleas, Loughlin initially resisted, a decision that intensified media scrutiny and polarized public perception. Many Americans viewed her stance as defiant, a sign of privilege clashing with accountability. The backlash was fierce. Social media transformed overnight into a battleground over fairness and wealth, with Loughlin at the center. Hollywood colleagues expressed shock, while critics argued her actions illustrated a deep cultural divide between average families and celebrity households insulated by status. Networks that once relied on her wholesome appeal quickly distanced themselves, severing relationships and canceling projects. The shift from beloved television mom to headline-dominating defendant unfolded with stunning speed. When Loughlin ultimately changed course, accepted responsibility, and received a prison sentence, her fall became one of the most discussed legal moments involving a modern television star. Her time behind bars was brief, but symbolically powerful. For many viewers, it demonstrated that even widely admired actresses could face real consequences when their decisions crossed legal boundaries. For others, it prompted conversations about how American society treats privilege, parental pressure, and educational inequality. In American pop culture, Lori Loughlin's descent from family-friendly icon to federal inmate remains one of the most defining scandals of the past decade. It reshaped her identity in ways no publicist could reverse, forcing audiences to reconcile the comforting character they grew up with and the far more complicated individual behind the scenes. Her story endures as a reminder of how quickly public favor can evaporate and how even the gentlest Hollywood image can fracture under the weight of a single high-stakes choice. 13. Michelle Rodriguez. Michelle Rodriguez built her reputation as one of Hollywood's most dynamic action actresses, known for roles that blended toughness, vulnerability, and raw physical presence. From her breakout performance in Girl Fight to her long-running role in the Fast and Furious franchise, she became a recognizable face to American audiences who admired her intensity on screen. At her peak, Rodriguez represented a rare mix of independent film grit and blockbuster appeal, earning respect for her commitment to portraying strong, uncompromising women. But as her career rose, her off-screen life grew increasingly turbulent. Rodriguez developed a reputation for hard partying and defiance of Hollywood norms. Those close to her often described her as fiercely independent, sometimes to a fault. Behind the scenes, that rebellious streak evolved into a pattern of legal trouble, particularly linked to alcohol-related incidents. Multiple arrests placed her at odds with court requirements, probation terms, and mandated programs meant to curb unsafe behavior. The situation reached a breaking point when Rodriguez repeatedly violated court orders tied to driving offenses. What began as a single legal issue spiraled into a chain of consequences: missed classes, incomplete community service, and alleged non-compliance that frustrated judges overseeing her case. The court eventually imposed a more serious penalty: actual jail time. In a moment that surprised both Hollywood insiders and longtime fans, she served a sentence that underscored how far the situation had escalated. Public reaction was mixed. Some fans admired her refusal to conform, framing her troubles as part of a hard-edged persona consistent with the characters she played. Others saw her behavior as reckless and concerning, especially given the dangers associated with driving under the influence. Entertainment outlets covered her legal setbacks extensively, turning them into tabloid material that contrasted sharply with her powerful on-screen image. Within Hollywood, there was a sense that Rodriguez's unpredictability could jeopardize major productions, even as studios continued to value her star power. Her time behind bars became a turning point, a moment when she confronted both personal consequences and widespread public judgment. Unlike actresses whose scandals stemmed from elaborate schemes or dramatic courtroom spectacles, Rodriguez's downfall came from stubbornness, poor decisions, and the inability to break free from a pattern that began years earlier. Yet despite these setbacks, she returned to work with renewed discipline, gradually stabilizing her place in the industry. In American pop culture, Michelle Rodriguez's prison stint remains part of a larger narrative about celebrity behavior, accountability, and the blurred line between screen persona and personal life. Her journey illustrates how fame can amplify every misstep, but also how resilience and self-reinvention can reshape a career even after very public consequences. 12. Winona Ryder. Winona Ryder was once one of the defining actresses of American cinema, a performer whose blend of fragility, intelligence, and quiet intensity made her a generational icon. From her early work in offbeat dramas to major roles in acclaimed studio films, she built a career that felt both artistic and accessible. By the height of the 90s, Ryder was more than a star. She was a cultural touchstone, emblematic of a particular era's mood and sensibility. Her name carried prestige, and her reputation remained remarkably unblemished in a notoriously unforgiving industry. But beneath that polished veneer, Ryder struggled with personal pressures, burnout, and the emotional toll of early stardom. Those mounting stresses surfaced dramatically when she was arrested for shoplifting high-end merchandise from a department store. The incident shocked American audiences. This wasn't a typical Hollywood scandal involving substance abuse or public outbursts. It was unexpected, confusing, and strangely out of character for an actress known for her quiet, introspective presence. As details emerged, the story became a national obsession. News outlets replayed surveillance footage, commentators debated her motives, and comedians turned the incident into relentless punchlines. For the first time in her career, Ryder became tabloid fuel. Hollywood insiders expressed disbelief, some describing the situation as a tragic sign of a young woman pushed past her breaking point, while others treated it as evidence of entitlement. Court proceedings revealed further layers, including testimony about emotional struggles and prescription medication, all of which complicated the public narrative. When Ryder received a sentence that included mandatory counseling, probation, and community service along with actual time in custody, it marked a dramatic fall from grace. The actress who once symbolized a generation now found herself navigating legal constraints and a bruised professional identity. Studios hesitated to cast her, fearing the media circus that surrounded her name. For several years, Ryder's career slowed to a near standstill, replaced by quiet reflection and attempts to rebuild her personal stability. Yet her lasting impact on American pop culture would not be defined solely by scandal. Ryder eventually returned to prominence with renewed purpose, becoming a key figure in projects that allowed her to reframe her narrative. Her resurgence demonstrated how public opinion can shift, how audiences often root for redemption, and how an actress's legacy can survive even the harshest scrutiny. Winona Ryder's time behind bars was brief, but its cultural reverberations were enormous. It remains one of Hollywood's most dissected moments, a story of pressure, identity, and the fragile line between public admiration and public judgment. 11. Shelley Malil. Shelley Malil built a modest but steady career in Hollywood, often appearing in comedic films and television projects that gave him a recognizable, if not household, presence. Although not an A-list star, he worked alongside major actors, earning roles that showcased precise timing, expressive energy, and strong character work. American audiences knew him best from supporting parts in widely watched comedies, where he delivered performances that blended awkwardness and charm. For years, he maintained a quiet, uncontroversial career, the kind that rarely generated headlines until everything changed in a single violent night. Behind the scenes, Malil's personal life was far more volatile than his career suggested. His relationship history involved emotional tensions and deep insecurities that would eventually escalate into tragedy. When an argument with his former partner turned into a shocking act of violence, the incident stunned Hollywood. The severity of the attack left the public horrified, and the story quickly spread through national news outlets, generating near-instant condemnation. Unlike scandals involving substance abuse or reckless behavior, this case centered on deliberate harm, making it one of the darkest incidents involving a working Hollywood performer. Court proceedings revealed a complex and grim narrative, marked by testimony, forensic evidence, and emotional statements from both sides. American viewers followed the trial closely, watching an actor known for comedic work confront some of the most serious criminal charges seen in the entertainment world. The contrast between his on-screen persona and the gravity of the allegations created a sense of dissonance that amplified the case's impact. Industry insiders distanced themselves immediately, and projects involving him were quietly removed from promotional cycles. When Malil was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, it cemented the case as one of Hollywood's most chilling falls from grace. His incarceration was not the result of career decline, addiction, or financial desperation. It stemmed from violence, a line that American audiences rarely forgive. For many viewers, the incident served as a stark reminder that fame does not shield individuals from accountability, nor does it alter the consequences of irreversible choices. In American pop culture, Malil's story endures as a cautionary example of how personal turmoil can erupt into life-altering consequences. His name became synonymous with a shocking crime rather than his earlier work, and his prison sentence removed him completely from the entertainment landscape. The case remains a sobering entry in Hollywood's long history of scandals, illustrating how quickly a career can collapse when private conflict turns catastrophic. 10. Allison Mack. Allison Mack was once a familiar face to American television audiences, especially during the years she spent on the hit series Smallville. Her performance as a sharp, determined young journalist made her a fan favorite and helped define the show's early 2000s identity. At her peak, she embodied the rising star archetype, talented, approachable, and deeply connected to a devoted fan base. Few actresses of her generation appeared more firmly positioned for long-term success in Hollywood. But away from the cameras, Mack became entangled in an organization that transformed her public image in ways no one could have predicted. What began as involvement in a self-help group evolved into deeper participation in a secretive inner circle, later exposed as manipulative and abusive. When federal agents launched an investigation, Mack emerged as one of the key figures accused of helping recruit and pressure participants inside the group's hierarchy. The allegations stunned American audiences, who struggled to reconcile the actress they knew with the troubling details released by prosecutors. The case quickly grew into a national conversation about power, vulnerability, and psychological coercion. Court documents described an environment built on manipulation, secrecy, and exploitation, and Mack's role became one of the most discussed elements. Hollywood reacted with disbelief. Former colleagues spoke cautiously, fans expressed shock, and media outlets dissected every development. Unlike scandals involving addiction or personal breakdowns, this case carried a sense of organized wrongdoing that made the fallout especially severe. When Mack entered a guilty plea, the courtroom atmosphere became emotional and conflicted. She acknowledged responsibility, expressed remorse, and faced her actions directly, but the gravity of the situation left an indelible mark on her reputation. The sentence she received included real time behind bars, a stark contrast to the stardom she once enjoyed. Her incarceration symbolized a complete reversal of fortune, transforming her from a rising actress into one of the most controversial figures connected to a high-profile criminal case. In American pop culture, Allison Mack's downfall remains one of the most shocking transitions from television fame to imprisonment. Her story is often cited in discussions about manipulation, group dynamics, and the vulnerability of individuals who appear outwardly successful. The contrast between her on-screen persona and her real-life involvement in the case continues to fascinate, disturb, and caution audiences. Mack's journey stands as a reminder that Hollywood careers can shatter not only through personal missteps, but through entanglements far darker and more destructive than anyone could imagine. 9. Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart was never a traditional Hollywood actress, Yet her presence across American television, film cameos, and lifestyle programming made her one of the most recognizable public figures of her era. For decades, she cultivated the image of the perfect American tastemaker, elegant, composed, and exceptionally disciplined. Her media empire reached into nearly every household, and her appearances in scripted projects often played on her impeccable poise and cultural influence. At her peak, Stewart was more than a celebrity. She was a brand synonymous with refinement and domestic mastery. But behind that picture-perfect exterior, Stewart operated in the high-pressure world of finance and corporate expansion, a realm far removed from her serene television persona. When federal investigators examined suspicious stock trades tied to a pharmaceutical company, her name emerged in connection with insider information and questionable timing. The allegations ignited a national firestorm. Americans who admired her polished image struggled to reconcile it with accusations of financial misconduct, a category of crime often associated with greed and privilege. As the case unfolded, Stewart maintained her innocence, but the narrative gained momentum through relentless media coverage. News networks replayed courtroom sketches, business analysts dissected her decisions, and comedians turned her legal troubles into nightly punchlines. Hollywood projects quietly paused, advertisers distanced themselves, and her lifestyle brand faced a crisis it had never experienced. The contrast between her controlled public image and the chaos of federal prosecution became a defining tension that fascinated American audiences. When she was found guilty on multiple charges related to obstruction and false statements, the resulting sentence included real time behind bars, an extraordinary moment for someone so deeply embedded in the fabric of American popular culture. Her incarceration became one of the most widely discussed celebrity prison terms of the early 21st century. Unlike cases involving addiction, violence, or chaotic personal behavior, Stewart's downfall stemmed from calculated actions in the world of finance, making it both unique and symbolically significant. Public reaction to her imprisonment was complex. Some saw her as a victim of harsh prosecution, arguing that her punishment was disproportionate. Others viewed the sentence as a necessary stand against corporate misconduct, especially when committed by powerful public figures. Within Hollywood, her case became a reminder that fame, influence, and sophistication offer no protection when legal boundaries are crossed. Yet Stewart's lasting impact remains unusually resilient. After her release, she returned to the spotlight with disarming humor and unapologetic self-awareness, reframing her prison term as part of her story rather than the end of it. In American pop culture, her journey stands as one of the most remarkable examples of downfall and reinvention, illustrating how even the most curated public images can fracture, and how some figures manage to rebuild after the collapse. 8. Remy Ma. Remy Ma emerged as one of the most distinctive voices in American hip-hop, known for her sharp delivery, commanding presence, and undeniable lyrical strength. Her rise began in the underground scene, where her charisma and intensity caught the attention of established artists. By the mid-2000s, she had become a recognizable cultural force, blending street credibility with mainstream appeal. Her collaborations, awards, and electric performances positioned her as a major figure at a time when few women in rap were afforded serious industry respect. At her peak, Remy stood as a groundbreaking artist reshaping the American music landscape. But behind the momentum of her career was a life shaped by hardship, mistrust, and survival instincts forged long before she entered the spotlight. Those pressures, combined with the volatility of fame, created a tense environment around her personal relationships. When an argument escalated outside a nightclub, everything changed in an instant. A confrontation over money turned violent, leading to allegations that stunned both the music industry and her fans. The incident resulted in serious criminal charges that carried the potential for a long prison term. The trial received widespread media attention. Coverage framed Remy Ma not just as an artist accused of wrongdoing, but as a symbol of the challenges women face in a male-dominated hip-hop world. Some supporters argued she was being unfairly targeted, while critics pointed to the severity of the allegations. The legal proceedings were emotional, dramatic, and closely followed by American audiences who had watched her rise with genuine admiration. Industry peers expressed shock, disappointment, and in some cases, solidarity, revealing the deep divides in public reaction. When Remy Ma received a lengthy sentence, the news reverberated across the entertainment world. Her incarceration effectively halted a promising career, transforming one of rap's brightest stars into a cautionary tale of conflict, trust, and the consequences of split-second decisions. But unlike many celebrity downfalls marked by addiction or financial ruin, Remy's story unfolded in the context of personal loyalty and street culture, making it both distinctive and deeply tied to the environment that shaped her. During her years behind bars, she maintained a disciplined approach to rebuilding her life, studying, writing, and preparing for a second chance. That determination would shape her legacy. Upon release, she returned to the music industry with remarkable force, earning respect for her resilience and for the introspective strength she brought back to her art. American audiences witnessed a rare reinvention, not a denial of her past, but a transformation built on accountability and hard-earned clarity. In American pop culture, Remy Ma's prison chapter stands as one of the most complex intersections of talent, environment, and consequence. Her journey remains a powerful reminder that even the brightest careers can collapse in a moment, and that redemption, while never guaranteed, is possible through grit and undeniable artistic skill. 7. Foxy Brown. Foxy Brown burst onto the American music scene with a force that was impossible to ignore. Her unmistakable voice, confident delivery, and fearless style made her one of the most influential women in hip-hop during the late 90s and early 2000s. She collaborated with major artists, topped charts, and cultivated a bold persona that blended elegance with street-born intensity. For many fans, she represented a new era of female empowerment in a genre dominated by men. At her peak, Foxy was more than a performer. She was a cultural statement. But behind that commanding presence was a life marked by volatility, personal battles, and a reputation for confrontations that followed her throughout her career. As her fame grew, so did tensions with industry peers, associates, and even strangers. Incidents involving altercations, disputes, and accusations gradually eroded the public's perception of her. What initially seemed like the fiery attitude of a rising star began to look more like a pattern she struggled to escape. The turning point came when a physical confrontation inside a New York nail salon spiraled out of control. The altercation resulted in serious charges, drawing national media attention and framing Foxy Brown as a celebrity unable to separate personal frustrations from public behavior. Court proceedings painted a complicated picture, a gifted artist battling impulse, anger, and the pressure of constant scrutiny. American audiences watched as the case moved forward, shocked that an artist with such immense potential had become entangled in a situation with real criminal consequences. Her legal troubles intensified after additional violations and incidents, many linked to probation terms she could not fulfill. Judges grew increasingly frustrated, and law enforcement viewed her as a repeat offender rather than a one-time cautionary tale. Eventually, the court imposed a prison sentence, a dramatic fall for someone once celebrated as a trailblazing star in hip-hop. The moment she was ordered to serve time marked a painful collision between celebrity identity and legal accountability. Hollywood and the music industry reacted with a mix of disappointment and resignation. Some peers defended her, explaining that the pressures of fame amplify personal struggles. Others distanced themselves, concerned that her unpredictability overshadowed her talent. For fans, the news symbolized a heartbreaking loss. One of the most influential female rappers of her generation, now defined not by her lyrical brilliance, but by her courtroom appearances and conflicts. Yet Foxy Brown's impact did not vanish. Even during her incarceration, she remained a subject of discussion in American pop culture, viewed as both a cautionary figure and an emblem of resilience. When she eventually returned to the public eye, she carried with her a hardened perspective shaped by time behind bars, a reminder that fame offers no immunity from consequence, and that even the most powerful personas can unravel when personal demons remain unaddressed. 6. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan rose to fame with a level of force and charisma rarely seen in young American actresses. From her early breakout in The Parent Trap to the cultural explosion of Mean Girls, she became one of Hollywood's brightest and most promising talents. Audiences saw her as witty, expressive, and naturally gifted a performer who could move effortlessly between comedy and drama. During her peak, Lohan was everywhere. Red carpets, magazine covers, fashion campaigns, and major studio projects. She represented a new generation of rising stars, poised to dominate American pop culture for years to come. But behind the glamorous image, Lohan was already struggling with pressures that began long before adulthood. Fame arrived early and fast, and as she transitioned into her late teens, her life spiraled into a cycle of late-night partying, unreliable work habits, and increasingly unstable relationships. The paparazzi documented every misstep, and her personal turmoil became one of the most publicized celebrity meltdowns of the 2000s. Studio executives who once saw her as a generational talent now viewed her as a growing liability. Her legal troubles began with a series of arrests tied to reckless behavior and substance issues, each incident drawing more media attention than the last. Court-mandated programs, probation requirements, and repeated violations placed her in direct conflict with the legal system. Judges expressed frustration at her inability to comply with orders, and prosecutors argued she received too many chances because of her fame. What might have remained minor offenses escalated into more serious consequences as she continued to violate the terms imposed on her. The turning point came when the court ordered her to serve jail time. While her sentences were often shortened due to overcrowding, the symbolism was powerful. One of Hollywood's most promising young actresses was now an inmate. Images of Lohan entering and leaving correctional facilities became defining moments in her career. American audiences watched her downfall in real time, with tabloids and networks turning her struggles into a near-constant spectacle. Hollywood's reaction was conflicted. Some insiders expressed sympathy, framing her troubles as the tragic outcome of a childhood spent under relentless scrutiny and poor guardianship. Others viewed her behavior as a cautionary tale about squandered potential and a lack of personal accountability. Her once bright star dimmed as major studios backed away, leaving her career in limbo. In American pop culture, Lindsay Lohan's prison time became emblematic of the darker side of child stardom. A reminder that talent alone cannot withstand the pressures of fame when personal foundations are unstable. Her story continues to be studied as one of Hollywood's most dramatic collapses, yet also one of complex resilience. Lohan's journey reflects both the brutal nature of public scrutiny and the enduring hope that even the most troubled careers can find a path toward reinvention. 5. Amanda Bynes. Amanda Bynes was once one of the brightest young stars on American television. From sketch comedy on Nickelodeon to leading roles in major teen films, she built a reputation as a natural comedian with sharp timing and undeniable charm. For much of the 2000s, she seemed unstoppable. A clean public image, a devoted fan base, and a career ascending effortlessly. She was considered one of the rare child actors who transitioned into young adulthood without scandal, and Hollywood expected her to remain a defining comedic force for years to come. But as the pressure of fame intensified, Bynes' personal life began unraveling in ways that alarmed both Hollywood insiders and longtime fans. The confident young performer who once anchored television shows grew increasingly isolated, unpredictable, and mentally fragile. Behind the scenes, she struggled with profound emotional turmoil, identity challenges, and a growing disconnect from the industry that had once embraced her. As her behavior escalated, paparazzi captured moments that painted a stark contrast to her former polished persona. Her legal troubles mounted quickly. Incidents involving reckless driving, public disturbances, and confrontations with law enforcement placed her repeatedly before judges who weighed her instability against public safety. The situation worsened when she was arrested after a volatile encounter that involved alleged property damage and dangerous behavior inside her own apartment building. The courts, concerned about her safety and the safety of others, imposed conditions that she frequently failed to meet, pushing her deeper into a cycle of legal consequences. That cycle eventually led to a court-ordered psychiatric hold, a step that, under California law, is considered a form of involuntary confinement and is legally classified as a custodial detention. Though not a conventional prison sentence, Bynes was placed in a locked facility under judicial authority, losing personal freedom under the same legal framework that governs criminal custody. The confinement was widely reported as her time in lockup, and for many Americans, it symbolized the point at which her struggles could no longer be dismissed as youthful chaos. Public reaction to her downfall was complicated and emotional. Some audiences responded with ridicule, fueled by harsh tabloid coverage and social media mockery. Others recognized the severity of her mental health crisis and criticized how the entertainment industry had failed to protect her. Hollywood insiders expressed sorrow, noting how drastically she had changed from the talented, focused performer they once worked with. Amanda Bynes's confinement remains one of the most sobering examples of a young star's rapid descent. Her story is a reminder of how fame can amplify vulnerabilities, how untreated mental health issues can transform into legal crises, and how the American media often exploits suffering for spectacle. In pop culture, she represents both a tragic collapse and a cautionary warning about the hidden pressures faced by child actors who grow up under relentless scrutiny. 4. Nicole Richie. Nicole Richie was best known to American audiences as the quick-witted, sharp-tongued personality on The Simple Life, the reality series that turned her into an early 2000s pop culture force. But long before the tabloids claimed her, Richie had already worked as an actress in guest roles, cameo appearances, and television projects that showcased her comedic instincts. She moved easily between scripted humor and unscripted chaos, becoming a familiar face in Hollywood's young celebrity ecosystem. At her peak, Richie represented a specific kind of American fame, playful, glamorous, and constantly photographed. Yet behind the effortless exterior was a young woman wrestling with instability, addiction, and the overwhelming pressures that accompanied sudden stardom. Her social life became a magnet for paparazzi, and her nights out grew increasingly reckless. By the mid-2000s, Richie's off-screen behavior overshadowed her work. Incidents involving erratic driving and substance issues sparked public worry, while online gossip amplified every misstep. She became a fixture in American tabloids, portrayed alternately as comedic chaos and spiraling danger. Her legal troubles escalated when she was arrested for driving under the influence after entering the freeway in the wrong direction, an incident that terrified both law enforcement and the public. It was a turning point, a moment when the consequences of her behavior could no longer be dismissed as celebrity mischief. Richie had already been convicted of a similar offense in the past, and under California law, repeat DUI violations carried mandatory penalties. This time, the court imposed jail time, making her one of the most high-profile young actresses and television personalities of the era to serve an actual custodial sentence. The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. Many Americans viewed the sentence as overdue accountability, especially given the dangerous nature of her actions. Others expressed sympathy, believing she was a product of a Hollywood environment that rewarded excess and punished vulnerability. The media covered every detail from her court outfits to the facility where she would serve her time, transforming her incarceration into a national spectacle. Hollywood insiders quietly acknowledged that Richie's situation reflected a broader pattern among young stars struggling with sudden fame, poor guidance, and constant scrutiny. During her time behind bars, Richie reportedly maintained calm and focus, determined to take responsibility and regain control of her life. Her behavior contrasted sharply with the chaotic persona the media had built around her. After her release, she took deliberate steps towards stability, becoming a mother, launching her own businesses, and gradually shifting public perception through consistency rather than spectacle. In American pop culture, Nicole Richie's prison stint stands as a vivid chapter in the early 2000s celebrity era, a time defined by young stars, relentless press, and spirals documented in real time. Her journey from reckless behavior to accountability and reinvention continues to shape how audiences remember her, not only as a reality-era icon, but as a woman who confronted her chaos and ultimately rebuilt her life. 3. Taryn Manning. Taryn Manning built a career defined by intensity, vulnerability, and a raw emotional presence that made her one of the most distinctive actresses of her generation. American audiences first noticed her in independent dramas, then watched her rise through acclaimed performances in films like Hustle and Flow, and later in the hit series Orange is the New Black. On screen, she excelled in playing complicated, wounded, and deeply human characters. At her peak, critics praised her as an artist unafraid to explore darkness, a performer whose work carried a bruised authenticity that few could replicate. But the emotional volatility that fueled her most memorable roles often mirrored the instability in her personal life. Behind the scenes, Manning struggled with long-standing issues that included personal trauma, substance challenges, and increasingly erratic behavior. Those close to her described a pattern of emotional highs and lows that grew sharper as fame amplified the pressure. Her off-screen world became turbulent, and as the chaos intensified, incidents involving confrontations, threats, and unpredictable outbursts began making regular tabloid headlines. The situation escalated when she became entangled in multiple legal disputes tied to altercations with individuals in her personal circle. Some incidents resulted in restraining orders, others brought police intervention. The most serious legal turning point came after a DUI arrest that placed her on strict probation. When she violated probation terms, a violation treated seriously under California law, the court imposed a custodial sentence. Though the time behind bars was relatively brief, it marked a defining moment. An actress celebrated for portraying fragile characters was now confronting real consequences for her own turmoil. The public reaction was conflicted and emotional. Some fans saw Manning's struggles as a tragic reflection of the pain she channeled so convincingly in her performances. Others viewed her behavior as concerning and increasingly dangerous. Entertainment journalists, already accustomed to reporting on her unpredictable episodes, framed the incarceration as both inevitable and deeply sad. Hollywood insiders expressed compassion but quietly acknowledged that her instability threatened to overshadow her considerable talent. During her time in custody, Manning appeared reflective, subdued, and determined to confront the inner chaos that had derailed her life. Court documents and statements from her representation suggested she needed structure, treatment, and distance from the intense cycles that had fueled her worst decisions. Her incarceration became a pivot point, not the end of her career, but a moment that forced accountability and introspection in a way no intervention had previously achieved. In American pop culture, Taryn Manning's prison chapter stands as a powerful example of the thin line between artistic brilliance and personal breakdown. Her downfall was not driven by arrogance, excess, or calculated wrongdoing. It emerged from emotional instability and unaddressed inner conflict. Her story remains a reminder that Hollywood often elevates performers for the very traits that later contribute to their collapse, and that without real support, the pressures of fame can transform private pain into public disaster. 2. Pia Zadora. Pia Zadora's career has always been one of the most polarizing stories in American entertainment. She began as a young performer on Broadway before transitioning into film, where her early roles were met with skepticism and controversy. Critics questioned the legitimacy of her sudden rise, and debates over her accolades, especially the high-profile awards tied to poorly reviewed films, made her a subject of fascination and ridicule. Yet despite the criticism, Zadora carved out a recognizable space in American pop culture as an actress, singer, and celebrity presence who was impossible to ignore. Behind the scenes, however, her personal life was far more volatile than her public appearances suggested. Years of conflicting relationships, financial turbulence, and emotional strain created an environment where tensions frequently escalated. Those who followed her career closely noticed a pattern of erratic behavior that occasionally surfaced in interviews and public events. That instability eventually erupted into a legal crisis that placed her at the center of national news. The turning point came when Zadora was arrested during a domestic dispute that involved allegations of violence and threats. According to publicly documented police reports, officers responded to a confrontation that had spiraled out of control inside her home. The details, which included accusations of physical aggression, shocked fans who knew her more for tabloid drama than for criminal behavior. The court treated the case with full seriousness, and Zadora was taken into custody, booked, and held as the legal process unfolded. Media coverage was immediate and intense. Tabloids portrayed her as unpredictable and dangerous, while mainstream outlets focused on the contrast between her glamorous public persona and the turmoil behind closed doors. Hollywood insiders expressed a mix of disappointment and resignation, noting that years of personal instability had finally reached a breaking point. The incident became one of the most discussed celebrity arrests of its time, especially because it forced Americans to reconsider their assumptions about a star they once dismissed as harmless, eccentric, or merely misunderstood. Zadora's time in custody, though not long, marked a profound shift in her reputation. For the first time, she wasn't simply a subject of critical debate or celebrity gossip. She was an actress facing real legal consequences. Fans reacted with shock, confusion, and, in some cases, sympathy. Others saw the arrest as the inevitable result of long-standing emotional volatility. The episode remains a defining moment in her legacy, overshadowing much of her later work. In American pop culture, Pia Zadora's prison chapter endures as a reminder of how quickly celebrity narratives can turn dark, and how the pressures of fame, personal instability, and unresolved conflict can collide in ways that reshape a public figure's identity forever. 1. Amy Locane. Amy Locane entered Hollywood with the kind of early momentum most young actresses only dream of. American audiences first noticed her in teen-centered projects of the late 80s and early 90s, where her natural screen presence, expressive energy, and distinctive voice set her apart. Her breakout role came with Melrose Place, one of the decade's defining television dramas. At her peak, Locane seemed poised for a long, steady career, a performer with both mainstream appeal and the emotional depth to take on more serious work. For a time, her future looked bright. But as the spotlight faded, Locane's life became increasingly unstable. She moved away from high-profile Hollywood roles, shifting into smaller projects, and focusing on family life. Privately, however, she struggled with long-standing issues involving alcohol and emotional volatility. Those close to her noticed a growing pattern of recklessness and self-destructive behavior, intensified by stress and isolation. The actress who once projected youthful confidence now appeared to be drifting into troubling territory, far from the disciplined environment of her early career. Everything changed on a devastating night in New Jersey, when Locane, driving under the influence, crashed into another vehicle, killing one woman and severely injuring another. The collision was catastrophic and instantly transformed her from a former television star into the central figure of a tragic criminal case. News of the crash spread across national outlets, shocking Americans who remembered her from Melrose Place and prompting intense debates about celebrity accountability, impaired driving, and the destruction caused by split-second decisions. The legal process that followed was long, complex, and emotionally charged. Court hearings featured forensic analysis, emotional testimony, and public statements from the victims' families. Locane expressed remorse, but the severity of the incident left little room for leniency. She was sentenced to prison, a rare, sobering outcome for a former Hollywood actress. After serving time, she was released, only to face a series of resentencings due to legal challenges and judicial reviews. Ultimately, she returned to prison more than once, making her case one of the most legally complicated celebrity incarcerations in modern American history. Public reaction was somber. Many saw the tragedy as a direct result of impaired driving and viewed the sentence as justified accountability. Others, while acknowledging her guilt, noted her deep remorse and the psychological weight she carried. Hollywood, however, remained largely silent. Locane had long stepped away from its inner circles, and the industry showed little interest in reviving her career. Today, Amy Locane's story stands as one of the most tragic entries in Hollywood's legal history. Not a tale of scandal, ego, or spectacle, but of irreversible loss. Her prison sentences reflect the gravity of the consequences and serve as a stark reminder that fame offers no protection from devastating mistakes. In American pop culture, her case remains a haunting symbol of how quickly a life can change and how deeply accountability can reshape a once promising career. Hollywood often hides its deepest fractures behind glamour, but these stories make the truth impossible to ignore. Each actress in this countdown rose through the same bright lights, only to fall through the same cracks: pressure, instability, addiction, violence, tragedy, or one disastrous decision that changed everything. Their paths to prison remind us that fame offers no immunity, and that even the most celebrated public lives can collapse in ways both sudden and irreversible. If you want more dark Hollywood documentaries like this, make sure to subscribe. New investigations, new countdowns, and new hidden stories are already on the way, and you won't want to miss what comes next.